Alrighty, I have an email here. Someone asking me a question about Kundalini waking stuff. So let's dive in. Real-time cough for y'all. Just so you know it's not AI. Okay, you said that a Kundalini awakening highlights where you're deluded, stuck, attached, in aversion, or out of alignment with reality. It must eventually lead to the resolution of these things. Question mark. Okay, first up, it's not that I say that, it's the teachings of Tantra, right? So just want to make that really clear, is that I'm highly influenced by non-dual Tantra, and I read the text and I study, and non-dual Tantra has a lot to say about Kundalini because that's where the word actually originates from. And so the teachings are that when Kundalini awakens, is a purification process that gets initiated, right, to purify all of the conditioning within the apparent limited sense of self. Now, ideally, we'll have done a whole bunch of practice prior to awakening, and that practice handles a lot of the purification. But for many people, an awakening happens and they haven't done all of that practice. And so the purification process can be really, really intense. Okay. So it must eventually lead to the resolution of these things. Well, not necessarily. It depends. It depends on how the person orientates to the purification process. Do they numb? Do they distract? Do they go into addiction? Do they deny, repress, suppress? Or do they seek out good teachers, good teachings, good practices, and good community? Do they dedicate themselves to allowing, surrendering, and supporting the purification practice, right? So how you approach the purification practice will determine the level of resolution of all of those different things, okay? So what is the first step? This person goes on to ask, what is the first step once you realize a Kundalini awakening is the cause? And I'm guessing that what they mean is the cause of increased intensity in life because of purification process unfolding. First step, find a great teacher, find great teaching, find great practice, find great community. As Buddha says, take refuge in the three jewels, right? Teaching, teacher, community. So I say that is the first step, is find a teacher you can trust, that you can work with, who can guide you in the process, whether that's within group teachings or one-to-one. And yes, I do work with people one-to-one, and I'm about to launch more opportunities to work with me with a group. I would suggest finding someone who has, it's an interesting thing here, right? Because I don't want to just point to myself as the solution, because there are many, many incredible, amazing teachers out there on the awakening continuum that you can work with, who can support you. Really check out their credentials, check out their community. Have they gone through Kundalini awakening, or have they gone through some kind of awakening experience? Are they well grounded in texts and lineages? But also recognize that some of the best teachers don't necessarily have lineages. One amazing teacher I'm thinking of is Karen Trace. I've been loving her teachings. She had a spontaneous awakening, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and it took her quite a while to integrate it. And now she's stepped out as a teacher, and I love what she brings. She's not a lineage teacher, right? But she has done the work. She's done the integration. She's not just talking about Kundalini awakening. She has lived through it and integrated it, right? So that's the first step. Once you realize that Kundalini awakening might be the cause of a whole lot of shit in the fan in your life. Great teacher, great teachings, great practice. Show up and devote yourself to it. Okay. How do you know you've had a Kundalini awakening as opposed to some other form of reality shift or realization? Well, in some ways, doesn't matter. It's a bit semantics, right? I mean, even the term Kundalini awakening is so often is used to point to things that would not traditionally have been seen as a Kundalini awakening. Often it's just movement of prana that's unfolding. So there is a teaching actually that Christopher Wallace gives in Tantra Illuminated, which is an incredible resource if you want to actually dive into traditional Tantra. And he does talk about there's 9 different stages of Kundalini awakening that he elucidates in there, and it's really, really good. I would actually come back though and ask the question, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Kundalini awakening or awakening into awareness or some other different kind of awakening per se, or reality shift or realization. What really matters is, what is your desire? What are you doing here on the path? Are you looking for self-realization, or are you looking for self-actualization? And just to define those two terms, self-realization is awakening to that which you are, knowing the self beyond the separate sense of self. It's like, oh shit, I'm just awareness, right? Self-realization. Self-actualization is more along the lines of healing and practicing. I don't use the word improving, but it's around it's the actualization of the potentiality within the human, right? And so you can be very self-actualized, but not self-realized. And you can be very self-realized and not self-actualized either. It's totally possible to be self-realized and still have a bunch of karmic shit running that makes you a shitty ass person to be around, right? Waking up is not the panacea that makes you into this glorious, incredible human, right? Okay. I may have had Kundalini experiences over the years. I'm not sure how I determine that. You don't need to. It's irrelevant. What's relevant is, do you want to wake up? Do you want to self-realize? Then find the teacher, the teachings, and the practices that will support that intention or that desire, right? I do know I've become more self-confident. I've resolved emotional blockages and past traumas, and that this has come about through practices. That's the self-actualization process, right? So self-confidence doesn't really compute from the perspective of awakening, because you just are. There's no self to be confident. There's just awareness. Yeah. So you can see how sometimes the questions themselves break down under examination, right? And really what I'm saying, it just comes back to the same things. If you're on the path and you want to wake up, find a good teacher, find good teaching, find good practices, devote yourself, show up, and do the thing. And sometimes it's also useful to have a good somatic therapist, because if you're carrying a lot of karmic imprints, if there's a lot of unresolved trauma, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, only working with spiritual practices is not necessarily beneficial, right? You need to do both and. And again, it's nuanced. It depends on the person. It depends what's going on. All right, that's it for now. That's all I got. Sending blessings.